Hey, tribe. We're welcome to have you back to this episode of Fit to Heal. Tonight, we embark on an inspiring exploration of the evolving role of fathers in today's world. Join us as we uncover the untold stories of dedicated fathers who are breaking through the traditional boundaries and embracing a new paradigm of nurturing and active fatherhood. Through heartfelt conversations, insightful interviews, uplifting narratives, we will challenge societal norms, dismantle stereotypes, and celebrate the profound impact fathers have on their children's lives. Together, we will redefine fatherhood as a powerful force of love, strength, and guidance, fostering deep connections and leaving a lasting legacy of compassion and empowerment. Get ready to be inspired, enlightened, and transformed as we embark on this empowering journey of redefining fatherhood. All right, y'all, let's welcome tonight's guest. You know, I always got to drop this thing off here. Yo, I love that beat. Let's see who we've got joining us today.
Peace. Oh, I got peace. I'm trying to pull up this article that I was supposed to pull up earlier, and I got home about 20 minutes ago, and I was working in my garden, well, my yard, and let me pull up this article, but I'm here.
Peace. Yeah, if I can see that, acting a little slow. There we go. I think we got everybody in there. Say hello to the people.
Peace.
Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Awesome. Peace to the brothers. The kings are here.
That's right. The guys are in the building.
Yes, sir.
So,
yes, ma'am.
Tonight, we're talking about the new role of fathers outside of the households. How y'all feel about that title, gentlemen?
We'll talk.
All right, I like it. So I got some questions for you. You know, technology does what it does, so we still got the music playing, so don't mind that, right? But let's discuss the changing of family structures. When we grew up, it was still kind of how it is now, but what's different? I mean, my father wasn't around, and now fathers are around, but they're not in the home. Tell me about it, brother.
Well, the reason why I took issue with the title is because oftentimes when we say traditional, right, we're saying, you know, Eurocentric traditional standards of a household in the 1950s, right? And that's not what our culture isn't that. Our culture is living with extended family. So like, you know, in the household you had, you know, mom, dad, you had aunts, uncles, you had, you know, your cousins, you might have a grandparent or two living with you, or they were living in the same neighborhood. So that's why back in the day, we didn't need daycare centers, because you always had elders who would take care of the babies, right? And everybody kind of shared in the child rearing. So a lot of people say traditional nuclear family home. That's not our tradition. But when I say tradition, I'm saying how it was before people started saying that in the 1950s, which was mom and dad, and then, you know, 2.2 kids in a house. So that's a Eurocentric, actually a very American thing, and that's not our tradition. So I will say that we kind of, I know me and Minister Zumbi talked about this before in the previous podcast. We talked about how crack cocaine really helped disintegrate our community, because when it comes to raising babies, you know that it takes a community to raise a baby. It's not just two parents at home. So it's a community. So going back to your original question, Fit Goddess, when we were younger, and I can speak for Minister Zumbi because we're kind of like the same generation. When we were younger, if I was 2 blocks down the street and I broke somebody's window, before I came home, my mother knew about it, because people in the neighborhood would let her know when I did something bad. And then other elders in the community, they would also, you know, let me know, like, hey, that was a bad thing to do. You know, I'm gonna let your mom know what you did. So crack cocaine came into the mix, into our community, and automatic weapons and all of that stuff. It really disintegrated our community, and that's where you see a breakdown of the family structure in our community.
I'll even rewind it. Before World War II, you had that nuclear and extended family intact. Okay. So when World War II came, the men were already taken out of the home because they were in a wartime situation. In order to keep the factories running, now that brought the women into the workforce in order to keep the economy going. And what happens after that is now, post-World War II, instead of one paycheck, now you need two paychecks in order to maintain a certain standard of living. Okay. It may have been good for the US economy, but what did it do to the family structure? Then there's other factors you have to take into consideration. Post-World War II, then, and this is really simultaneous with the introduction of crack cocaine and heroin into the community. The beginning of globalization, the beginning of AI, the beginning of outsourcing, downsizing, privatization. Okay, so all of those things took place. So by the time the 1980s emerged, okay, that's when you started seeing the introduction first of powdered cocaine and then later crack cocaine. So there are other factors to go along with what Dan was talking about in terms of the factors that change things.
And then if the report I wanted to bring up was the CDC, the Center for Disease Control. They did a study, and this came out about 8 years ago, and they said Black fathers were 70% were most involved and likely to have bathed, dressed, diapered, or helped their children use the toilet every day, compared with their white counterparts, who were 60%, and Hispanic fathers, who were 45%. So I just kind of like want to throw that out there real quick. I know there's this stereotype, there's this narrative that right, Black fathers are not present, but we have studies that prove that we actually are very, very present, more so than our counterparts.
True, and it's something that in knowing so many outstanding fathers that you guys deal with on multitude of levels, like whether it's going to school and, you know, discussing or advocating for your child, and you are somehow spoken to as if you're not supposed to know anything. But how would you think the things that you guys spoke about, how would you think those shifts in the family dynamics impacted the fathers specifically in their involvement in their children's lives in and outside of what we're calling the traditional, non-traditional for our people, but traditional standard of where we live?
I think Minister Zumbi, he alluded to it right earlier, and we've talked about this in previous podcast episodes, that there are a lot of external factors, right? And I'm not trying to justify anybody's absenteeism when it comes to their children, and I'm not saying that it doesn't happen. It does happen, you know, more often than not, you know. But there's a lot of external factors that cause that, and I know. Speaking from experience, working with a lot of young fathers, I know the biggest thing they have is the pressure to provide for their family, right? And I know Minister Zumbi talked about, you know, stagnating wages. You know, we also have job discrimination, right? Things of that nature where, and you know, on top of, you know, super inflation and the cost of living going up, and, you know, just all of those factors involved. It's tough. It's real tough to be a dad, to be a parent. Really, it's really tough to do that, to maintain a household. So I know for a lot of us that's a big, because that's tied to our manhood. It's tied to our masculinity. You know, being able to provide to our family, and it's a big pressure, especially today.
Yeah, it was something that Dr. Amos Wilson had addressed at a lecture in Newark about 1991, where he talked about the reluctance of African males to marry, not because they didn't want to, but if you felt that you were financially inadequate to take on a wife and eventually children, now you become more reluctant because you didn't want to be perceived as a failure. So on the one hand, you're told these are these are the things expected of a man to do, being a producer, provider, and protector of the village. But on the other hand, you've got this external systemic vehicle that is preventing you from fulfilling your duties as a man. So it's kind of a catch-22.
Okay, so you're saying it's the same pressure, just different, right? Women feel similar to take care of their man, their children, themselves, the household, provide some kind of finances so she doesn't feel like a quote unquote gold digger. But it's different because it's attached to your manhood. Like, we could never have kids and I could still take care of you, and then I have less to do, but you taking care of the woman gives you a different role. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's, and whether you want to look at it from a cultural standpoint or those who subscribe to any of the Abrahamic faiths, they all talk about what the role of the man is. In fact, within the Abrahamic faiths, it's said that the man is the foundation or the cornerstone of taking care of that family. And when a man feels, I guess for a lack of a better term, inadequate, that he may not be providing things, whether they're tangible or intangible, it can take its toll on his psyche, on his emotional well-being, and ultimately his physical well-being because of the stress factor.
Okay, so I feel that, but how do we get these biases from surrounding not only the atmosphere, right, where the gentlemen are, but like their mentality? How do we? Because I know they exist, but like Dan said, it's being shown that you don't exist, so much so that you would look at a black man and think that he's uninvolved just because of the color of his skin. How do we reconfigure those stereotypes and biases?
I don't. Good. I'm sorry, Mrs. Obi.
Oh no, I think the one thing we have to be aware of is, what is the first weapon used in warfare? Propaganda. Okay. When you are being propagandized against and you don't control distribution of images, then you get to paint a narrative, especially when you know that the general population doesn't do research. And, I think we've kind of proven so far that the propaganda and the statistics don't add up. Okay. So what really has to happen is, what is separate what is propaganda from what is empirical data or statistics. And once you're able to do that, then you can say, all right, we know that this is a false narrative. Now, going to your question, how do we put out a positive propaganda message? Okay.
And my response would be that so and I'm speaking from personal experience. As a father, as a partner, my community has supported me wholeheartedly. Right, everywhere I've gone, I've been supported wholeheartedly, and I made sure that I reciprocated that support, and I made sure that anybody I work with as an educator reciprocates that support as well. But there's never been anybody that I've worked with that's been like, he's a deadbeat dad. Like I never had that. You know what I'm saying? Again, this is my experience. So So my whole point is, mainstream media, white supremacist, capitalist, patriarchy, whatever, they don't have our best interests at all. Even though the CDC did the actual studies and proved to themselves that they were wrong, right? I don't care, and we shouldn't care, right? We shouldn't care, right? Because they're gonna always say that we're trash. They're gonna always say that we're the worst. No matter what we do, no matter how we do, no matter what we achieve, right? They're gonna say we the worst because we always. I've never told my kids be twice as better because they're gonna think you trash anyway. I never told them that, But no matter who and what we do, they're gonna say that about us. And my thing has always been do what you're supposed to do, right? Because only people we should worry about is each other, right? That's all we should worry about is each other. So my community's been supportive, and I try to reciprocate that. I've been a part of organizations that are for Black fathers, that support Black fathers and Black families. So they've always been around even before I became a parent, and they'll probably be here way after I'm gone. So I think that if we roll that way, doesn't matter what they say about us, what they think about us, what they put out in the media about us, we know that they're wrong.
I love it. So you're saying affirm yourself, gentlemen, to yourself and then to one another as brothers. Am I hearing you correctly?
Exactly.
Okay. I love that. So
Doesn't
go ahead, Mama.
it doesn't seem, I mean, I hear the question being asked, like, how do we change the narrative? But there's nothing that we need to do to prove to anyone out there that, our brothers and fathers and cousins and nephews and uncles are taking care of their family. The fact remains that the family is taken care of. That is the proof. The proof is that you tried, or the agenda has been to try to remove the father from the household. And in spite of that, the father still remains in the household for the most part. And if they are unable to function in the household as a father, the only thing that they can do is function outside of the household as a father, as much as they are allowed, within the household to function. It's not something that has to be proven. No biases have to be changed. No narratives have to be re-edited. We are an ever becoming society that we have our beliefs and cultures already built into us, and they will come forth when the opportunity presents itself in time, as the foot is lifted off of our necks as fathers, men, or whatever.
Okay. So both of you gentlemen talked about Afrocentricity. So in what ways do you believe in evolving these family dynamics, and how do we reroute in those Afrocentric values to contribute to, let's say, empowerment and strength of fathers, their children, and the wider community?
Okay, well, what was the question again?
How do we evolve the family dynamics in Afrocentric values?
I apologize. I was just talking to my youngest.
Okay.
I think the first thing is that we do have to get rid of a lot of these things that we think are our traditions, right? That's the first thing we have to say, because this idea that it has to be a nuclear family, right? Even though we all grew up in households where it was extended family, right? We had auntie was living with us with our cousins, grandma stayed with us, or we stayed with grandma and some of our cousins and maybe our uncles and aunties. That's our tradition, recognizing that that's our tradition that's always been around. The idea of aunties and uncles, the idea of, me being an uncle, I have a part in child rearing, right? So I do like the fact that in your subtitle, Faith God, you talked about how what we have to do outside of the household, right? Because I remember when I was a young dad, and my brothers used to be like, Baba Danny. I used to be like, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't call me Baba Danny. Because now all the kids in the community are going to be like, oh, you're a dad. So you're our dad too, right? So, and I knew that was a big responsibility. So one of the things that we did was my children called, my brothers Baba, and vice versa. Their children called me Baba. So there's this idea that, oh, you're a father. So when you walk into a room, you're an authority figure, and you're someone that we have to listen to, and you're also someone that you're going to take care of us, right? So I joke with my students all the time. I always say to them, please don't do something or have your mother call here and cuss me out, because all I can really do is just accept the cussing out, right? Because
Right.
when they're in my classroom, they're under my care, right? Whatever child, if your children are with me, they're under my care. I'm going to take care of them like they're my children. Right? And that's the first thing we have to look at, the concept that if I'm automatically a father or an uncle, that everybody in my community, I'm their father and their uncle. And let me say this, people can say what they want. Young people are very receptive to that. Young people are they might say OG to me, they might say OG, but even that, there's a level of respect. So when I go certain places, hey, can y'all keep it down a little bit? We're doing something over here. My bad, OG. I'm sorry. Are you good? Just letting you know. And I've never had nobody give me negative feedback. So young people want that. Young people want that. They want that. They want to know that people around them are looking out for them. You know what I'm saying?
Well, that's indicative of child rearing, right?
Exactly.
Like, that's the nature of the child. If you study child development, is it craves structure, and the job of the parent is to provide said structure. So at all times, everybody, even adults, need some kind of structure. And so you're saying, as gentlemen, you need to stand back up and provide more structure for the community.
Yes.
And I think I'll go one step further. Before we become fathers, before we become husbands or even candidates or potential mates, there has to be a process of becoming men first, building good men first. Okay. We all come into this planet as biological males, but to talk about becoming men, that's a social process. So when we were captured, one of the things that was taken away from us was our manhood rituals. Okay. We were the ones who set the tone, set the agenda, developed the actual programs and processes to move young males from boyhood into manhood through a series of, for lack of a better word, trials. And so I think, and that's kind of something I'm working on right now, is the reestablishment of manhood rituals, not only for the young males, but also for males in more advanced stages of life. Because I think a lot of times those in the advanced stages of life think, well, now that I've reached a certain age, I don't have to conduct myself in a particular manner. No, it's actually more, your margin of error shrinks as you get older, as more and more younger generations of males look to you not as a role model, but a real model. Okay. So I think, the reestablishment of cultural manhood rituals, I'll put it that way.
So you're referring to rites of passage,
Right?
Or well, let's take it one step beyond that.
Yeah.
If we were to take the Samburu people, who are based in modern day Kenya, one of the things that they focused on was being financially free and economically independent. That was their emphasis of their manhood training, because everything within the Samburu people dealt with ownership. Because if you owned and controlled resources, now you have proven. In fact, here's an example. Okay, let's say a young man from the Samburu people. You go out, you hunt wild game. That's your crucible, okay, or your capstone. Once you come back with the wild game, you present that game to your mother and grandmother, okay? And that's a kind of a symbolic gesture, but it also says this: It says you no longer have to feed me because I have the capacity to feed a village. And I have now graduated from consumer to producer,
Oh,
which is the true representation of what manhood is your ability to produce, not consume.
ooh. I never heard it said like that.
Absolutely. And thus the importance of the return or the continuation of the rites of passage process here, which is the lost culture, that we used to embrace and embody and use to create citizens, decent citizens into the world. That's not the case on a cultural basis because there's no culture here. So all the cultures that create the entities, like Brother Zumbi just mentioned, are lost cultures. But we have the ability to re um, introduce or continue introducing those cultures and those value systems in our own nation, so to speak, if that's what we choose to do. But if we don't, then we are subject to fathers continuing to function inadequately, men continuing to function inadequately, women, the whole family structure. So I think it's critical um, when you talk about the new role. It's not really a new role. It's just us trying to bounce back from being, held down for so long and not being able to implement what it is that we know in our genetic code to do. So we're
Okay.
constantly fighting against it.
So you guys mentioned the Baba, right? And there's a different word for every kind of language that there is that means father. Um, and you Dan, you said you spoke of it in that terms of pressure, and I can imagine, right? Um, because in taking on roles and teaching multiple children, you're like, oh snap, now I have to mother all of these kids.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you encourage, just like you would encourage, like I encourage my sons to become gentlemen for whomever they come into contact with? How do you encourage as a father figure the community to begin to step up into their individual roles? Like my son is a father figure to his brother, and I see it often, and it's remarkable where he'll take him legit under his wing. Oftentimes, even when he was very little, he used to tease, "Mom, give the baby to me. I'll take care of him." How do it doesn't seem to be ingrained in people, or maybe it's a lesson that's learned. How do the fathers translate this message to the community?
And I'm speaking from personal experience. So I know that growing up in the hood, like I was like a real book smart. I grew up in the projects, James Row houses in the Bronx. I grew up in the hood during the crack cocaine era, and I remember like the real tough kids, like the kids that were like really tough that could fight. Because I wasn't. I was always a little dude. The kids that could fight in my neighborhood, they used to look out for me, right? They didn't let nobody mess with me. And I even remember because I was a dancer. I remember being a teenager, and I remember like going out to parties out in Brooklyn or Manhattan and coming home late. And the drug dealers in my neighborhood used to scold me because they was like, the only thing you could be doing out here this late is getting in trouble. You shouldn't be out here, right? So I took a lot of those lessons to heart, because they were like, you're supposed to be at home in the books. You ain't supposed to be out here at 3, 4 in the morning. There's only things you can do out here is be in trouble. So I remember that. And I know in my classroom, I really get the knuckleheads to really look out for the kids that really can't defend themselves, right? So I'm really on that. I am my brother's keeper. I'm really big on that, looking out for each other because we all we got. We all we got. So I'm real big on that. And the thing is that I have to model that, right? Now I have to mentor, but I also have to model that behavior, right? I have to like look out for the younger people. So I'm going to say this right now. Probably the closest thing that we have to a rites of passage is martial arts. So I know that for me, being in capoeira, I've been able to mentor a lot of young men and women right? I have students that I've known since they were teenagers, and they're adults now. They have families now, their own homes, and all of that stuff. So all over the country. So I'm really thankful to be a part of that growth and development for my students. So I know that for me, I had to model that. I didn't just teach them capoeira. I modeled different things that they needed to see me do in my community. And I also took care of them. If they needed something to eat, I looked out for them. They needed some place to stay, I looked out for them. And I really had to model that behavior. Now, and everybody knows that. My house is open to any and all. When we lived in Virginia, who you never know who's in my house. You know, even on a Monday night, you never know who came through the house. So I try to model that, and I'm thankful that the best example I could give you is I had a student, single mother, and she was looking for a job. She was working at the Amazon warehouse on the weekends, and she was watching the kids. She wasn't making a lot of money, but one of my older students, who's been with me for 10 years, he has his own business. He was like, "Hey, she could come work for me and bring the child in. She could work she could work the hours that she can work, and I got her." You know, and that's something that I was like, wow, like I didn't see that coming from him because he was not that kind of guy. He's not the nicest guy in the world, but he did that. I see you, Avogado. Shout out to you. He didn't have to do that. I didn't have to prompt him. He just did it, right? And so that's something that I really had to model, and it works. That's from personal experience.
And for me, I guess mine came through sports. Particularly football. There's a term we use called the locker room lawyer, and I became that by default. There have been situations where I've had to take in incoming freshmen. There was even one situation where, you know, it's easy to be a thug until your scholarship is threatened. Okay. So when those situations happen, I always got the phone call, and I'm sitting in the office of the executive vice president of student affairs trying to save my teammates from expulsion so he can graduate on time. And I've been in a number of those conversations. You know, one time I think I was jokingly called Johnny Cochran because of that. And like I said earlier, you know, it's not about being a role model, but a real model. So coaches used to always tell us nothing good happens after midnight. Okay. So if anyone saw me out after 11:30, they knew I was doing some type of work study job, particularly in the computer lab. So everybody knew where I was, whether I was at the radio station, you know, helping produce a show, or I'm in the computer lab doing work study. Okay. So everybody knew where I was at that time. All right. So it's just like what Dan said, always practice what you preach. Okay. And then being, you know, in many cases, a father figure, because at least for me, I may have been the closest thing to a father figure for a lot of incoming freshmen or a lot of JUCO transfers who have never had any sort of positive male influence in their life. Okay, so that brings on kind of an extra burden of responsibility, not only as a peer or a teammate, but maybe one who is a little older.
All right, y'all had a couple phenomenal, Danny, you brought up helping out a single mother, and as a woman, that is a delicate balance, because I often tell men that date me, I always have men around me. Like, it's not a negative thing. I have two sons. I always have men around me for them. But finding those men who, like you, can appreciate my womanhood, but not overstep. There's a role that you play and a dynamic that you serve by being that baba. You now are showing my sons how to interact with a woman who you want nothing from, right? And that is pivotal, because I can't step outside myself and do that. But how, because it seems like the world that we live in is very lustful. How can we encourage men to grow in that level of maturity to where you can get past the visual and, like, move in purpose, whether that purpose is just assisting in a father figure role, being an example for a woman who may have never had a like Zumbi said, never had a positive role model or positive image of a man. How can we get men to be like, hey, yeah, that's me. I'm that, and act as it no matter what.
There's two things that I do. Number one, I always challenge brothers on the idea of who is a queen, right? And what does that mean, right? Because a lot of times we'll say that's my queen. Black women are queens, whatever. And I'm like, but we don't treat black women as such, right? So either you whatever you say come out your mouth, you're gonna follow that, or don't use that word at all, right? So if black women are your queens, treat them as such, right? But if you're not going to treat them as such, and stop using the word, right? That's the first thing I do. But the second thing is that we really have to see women as our partners, right? In this war of liberation, women are our partners, right? We're 50-50. It's 50% of us, right? We're partners. It can't be liberation just for us, right? It got to be liberation for everybody. So we really have to see women as equal partners. And unfortunately, because of white supremacist capitalist patriarchy, we don't see women as our equals. We only see women as either women we could bed or women we can impregnate, right? And if we don't see them as, unless they're like our mothers and our sisters and our aunts, we don't see women as our partners. So I stay on my brother's necks about that. I really do. And I've had situations in my classroom, in my capoeira classroom, where women were abused, right? Where women were treated unfairly, right? And it happened on my watch. So I take full responsibility on that, because that happened in my closeout with my circle, and it shouldn't happen that way. You know what I'm saying? So if I'm a warrior, or I'm raising warriors, I'm cultivating warriors, our number one job is to protect our community. And if we're not doing that, then we can't be warriors. This is bottom line. So again, it's funny that you said that you're around mostly men. I'm the reverse. I'm around mostly women. Most of my colleagues are women. I have 3 best friends. 2 of them are women, right? I hang out with mostly women. Anybody will tell you, I hang out with mostly women. I'm going to say 75-25%. And, I take yoga classes. I'm usually the only male in there, so it's like I'm around a lot of women. I'm always with my partner. I hang out with my sister. So it's kind of like, so I'm the reverse of where you're in. So I consistently have to model how I treat women. Like, I see them as partners in this liberation. I see them as partners at my job. I see them as my equal. And I have to really model that. And I really have to be the one. I have to be the one to open up my mouth when something goes left.
I remember a conversation I had with Brother Steve Coakley in November 2002. We were all sitting in the Best Western Hotel, and he said something to us that still sticks with me to this very day. He says, when you choose to serve the people, don't come before the people dirty. Mm-hmm. Okay. And the reason why that stuck with me is because there are standards and there are rituals. Okay. So if I, as a man, say that this is my standard, okay, in terms of how I conduct myself in the presence of women, what are the rituals that I practice that reinforce that standard? Okay, because a lot of times what happens is we have men who say, this is my standard, but your rituals are the total antithesis or are in contradiction to what you say your standards are. So as the God bodies would say, show and prove.
Wait, brother. Now, I need you to break it down for Ray Junebug like you do so well. And say that one more time, because they might have missed it.
Okay, I'll put it this way. Your demonstration beats your conversation every time. And if your demonstration and your conversation are contradictory, then I go with your demonstration, because that is more honest than your conversation.
I could break it down for them even further. A lot of us don't live our raps.
Ooh. Ooh, you mean
A
to
lot of
tell
us
me
still
that
live by
they
rap.
like what's the name? Barry White talking some practice what you preach?
Yeah, a lot of us don't live by raps. Yeah.
Mm.
Or we live it until it becomes convenient not to.
That part. So both of y'all talked about standard and rituals and like higher expectation. Um, in child rearing, right? Whatever expectation you put on the child is what they feel again with the guidance and structure that they kind of have to meet. So where does that lie within the man community where I'm my brother's keeper and we are holding ourselves and each other accountable for this standard of man?
I think what we show up for is what our children see that's important, right? You know what we show up for. So if your children see you showing up, um, one of the things that a lot of young brothers tell me is, this is part of the tough. I'm trying to say this without crying, right? This time of the year is the toughest for me, because a lot of my students are leaving my classroom that I've developed, a rapport with, and I'm not going to see them every day, right? And then like a lot of them will say, "Hey, Mr. R, can you come to my graduation?" The students that I mentor, and I'm like, "Yeah, I'll be there," and I'll show up, right? But the people that need to be there are not showing up, right? So that says to them clearly this is not important, right? But a lot of us, one thing I tell, if you're a new educator, if you're starting education in the fall, one thing I'll tell you to do is I'd be like, "Hey, a great way to develop a rapport with your students is go to their games, go to their basketball games, go to their football games." And that's where you see their families at. You see, if you want to meet their peoples, go to the football game, go to the basketball game, and you're gonna meet the whole lineage at those events, right? So so a lot of our children believe this is where I need to focus at because this is where I get the most attention, right? So I think that if we emphasize this is important, if we show up for these things, right,
Yeah.
they're gonna say, okay, this is important to my family, and they're setting the standard. Then I know I need to do well here, right?
Gotcha.
You know what I'm
So
saying? So show up to the award ceremonies, right? When they give out awards for academia, you show up to that. They're gonna be like, oh, this is very important because you took time off of work to show up. You know what I mean? So that's really what it is.
yeah, sorry. Shout out my 11-year-old. He's AB honor roll, graduated 5th grade today. We got a middle schooler.
He graduated.
Bruh, I'm so
Send
excited.
me your Cash App.
Will do, no
Send me
doubt.
your Cash App. Yeah. And if there's a comic book he likes, let me know. I got it.
Listen, he's into dinosaurs. That's
Okay.
his thing. I will get with him about the newest dinosaur that he's into, and I will let you know that.
Okay, then he needs to check out Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. Though. It's on Disney Plus.
Listen, I've already watched the thing twice.
Yeah.
But so, okay, I like what you said about developing this rapport, not only with one another, but with women. Again, this to rebuild the community, men have to take, in my opinion, a lead in stepping to sisters with respect and making it a consistent behavior, kind of like I do with my girlfriends. Like, if I meet a woman and I give her a compliment and she doesn't receive it, I will politely correct her and say, well, most people say thank you when you've been given a compliment.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and it does the thing. One, I do this because I've been told by men, I tried to give you a compliment and you didn't receive it. So as a man, I'm not going to do that no more. So to help my sisters out, because I am my sister's keeper, I'm like, sis, you better start receiving this so that when it comes to you from whatever source, you can hear it for what it is. But how do we get men to start to come together and agree to give that thing which they want to receive as the leader, as the head of a household, as the God, as the king, as the, you know what I'm saying?
I think, and I know I'm gonna keep repeating myself. Showing up, man. Like, we gotta show up, yo. I'm gonna give you an example. I'm gonna give you a good example, right? I run a book club, right? And what'll happen in my book club, and I know that people get mad at me because I run it as a democracy, right? I'll say, hey, for the next month, we're going to be doing nonfiction because we switch up. We do nonfiction and then we do fiction. I'll be like, what do y'all want to read? and people give me suggestions, right? I take the suggestions, right? And then we put it up for a vote, right? And then, oftentimes, I'm not gonna lie, the women get their way, right? So what ends up happening is the brothers are like, we're not pulling up, you know. But my thing with the brothers is I'm like, yo, y'all gotta first of all suggest books and then come and vote. You know what I mean? Because you see I let everybody know these are the books that are coming in, right? And I'm like, suggest books, and the brothers don't suggest books. So then when we have the book club meeting, it's like 75% women, 25% men. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, you need to show up. I have a men's emotional health group, and it's very difficult to get. And it's funny because my homies pull up, of course, because I'm there. They're like, oh, Danny's there. We're gonna pull up. But getting new brothers to come in, it's like they think I'm like, am I part of the CIA? Because like I'll have somebody that's interested. They'll ask me a zillion questions. What are we doing? Who's going to be there? And I'm like, okay, clearly he's interested, and he doesn't show up. My homie does free yoga classes, and you know me, I love free 99. I love free 99. It's free. I'm there. I'm going to show up twice. So free yoga classes, you can't beat that.
Nah,
can't get the brothers to show up for nothing, man. Even if you can't get them to show, so we got to show up. Brothers got to show up. I just, I'm known for my last thing I'm gonna say, last complaint I'm gonna have, and I'm gonna leave it alone. Ask anybody out there. We are known for our house parties. We are known for our house parties. We've been doing it 20-something years. You know what I mean? Even before we actually got married, we was doing house parties, big house parties. I know a lot of single women. I try to get a lot of single brothers to pull up, but I can't. So it'll be 20 single women, right? It'll be the men. All the men are partnered, and this is like, it'll be my one single brother there, and it's just like, y'all, we got to show up. We just got to show up, man. That's all we got to do. The sisters want us around. They want us around. They want to do yoga with us, right?
That's right.
For me, I always say revolution begins in the mirror. And what I mean by that is, and this is what's worked for me, what is my daily walk? Because I can say anything, but I am what I repeatedly do. Okay. So if young men are constantly seeing me engage in productive activity, constructive activity, whatever that is, whether it's going to work, whether it's going to the gym, coming home, so they can see my walk. Is it organized? Is it structured? Do they see me at home at a specific time? Because I think sometimes just being and doing who we say we are could be more than enough. And sometimes it's like what Chairman Fred Hampton says, the people learn through observation and participation. So if the people are observing your walk consistently, there's a good chance that they may begin to participate by modeling and mimicking, your daily walk.
I can see that.
For brothers who struggle with that, because I hear it a lot in the dating world, just in the community, as a woman, I've learned raising sons, communicating with men, y'all don't always listen to me. And that's cool. Like that's not my problem. Y'all missing out because you're not listening to me. It's fine though. How do we get that communication whereas a woman is like, yo, maybe you need therapy. Maybe you need to go see a nutritionist. Maybe you need to go see a doctor. Man, I'll go with you, and a brother can receive that. And you may have said it again earlier in terms of partnership, but how else can we as women how can we refrain ourselves, reframe our words to be heard better?
You can't. You can't. I hate to be that way. I hate to be that way. And it's just, sexism. It is 100%. It is us. We need to fix that. Like that's something that we need to fix. Like, and I've been in rooms at work where a woman will suggest something and it'll get ignored. I'll be like, like they'll be like, well, how are we gonna fix it? And somebody will say, a woman will say, we need to do X, Y, Z. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, that's a great idea. And then I've heard like the manager be like, anybody get any suggestions? And I'm like, whoa, she just gave you a suggestion. Now, if it was trash and say, hey, that's a bad idea because of X, Y, Z, but they're just like, anybody got any suggestions? I've been in that situation where I'm like, wow, they just gave a suggestion. And in that situation, I said, hold on, Miss So-and-so did say we should do this, and that's a good idea. We should do that. And then that's when they listen. You know what I'm saying? Which I think is totally sexist and it's messed up. And then I had to be like, and I had a situation where they were like, oh, great idea, Danny. And I'm like, wait a second. That was her idea. That was not my idea. Trust me on that. I've had that happen before. I'm dead serious. I've had situations where women have brought up complaints and the male manager has laughed at them. Like, and I'm like, yo, that's a serious complaint. Like, what are we doing here? We need to fix that. You know what I'm saying? And like, and I've had women tell me I'm leaving here because I'm in a hostile work environment. And that's something as men, we need to really, and I'm guilty of it. I'm not going to act like I'm innocent. My partner will tell me, hey, I need you to do this. I'll be like, I got it. Let me tell you about the Sam's Club fiasco the other day, because that was ridiculous, right? She hear her laughing in the background. See? So like I've done it before, I'm cussing at the customer service rep at Sam's Club. She didn't tell me to go to, she told me to go to Costco. And I'm over here at Sam's Club raising hell. And she on the phone like, yo, why ain't the stuff coming up? And she ain't tell me nothing about Sam's Club. I just told me Costco. So I'm guilty of it too. I'm cussing that dude out. I'm like, yo, I'm ready to rip him across the thing. And
You was trying to be
yo, I apologize to that brother so much, man. Oh my God. Like,
it's also a language barrier too. And I deal with this all the time with my husband. I'll say something and he will attempt to paraphrase what I said. And it is not anything that I said. What is up with that? But I get it. We speak different languages.
No, we don't listen. It ain't got nothing to do with language. We just don't listen.
Well, I'm just saying that what you hear, what we say, how it goes into your head, it's reformatted, and then what comes out is what
No, that ain't the problem. The problem is
no, it is right here.
Your lips, and then they start to think thoughts, and they have tuned you out because they are anyway.
She didn't say Sam's Club, man. She said Costco. That's too, that.
Because you won't listen. You were thinking about other things when you was looking at her talking to you.
I said Costco.
That's how you know he was, especially if you was staring at her in her face, brother.
No matter.
I was already getting my keys and going out the door, yo. I was like,
Yeah. I think they're distracted by the beauty or something.
Straight to Sam's Club. I didn't go. I didn't drive. I went straight to Sam's Club, yo.
That's where you wanted to go.
Yeah, customer service rep couldn't tell me nothing. I'm like, nah. I know it's in there. Oh my goodness.
Okay, so that's a pivotal part, though, right? Mm-hmm. With the way our society is, the way our family structures is now, the communication between men and women has to be impeccable. Like both of us, because men are equally, sometimes more emotional than women.
Very emotional.
We got to stay out of our feelings when we're trying to have a conversation with one another, especially when it involves the
Talk
children.
about it, Queen.
Well, here's my thing with the emotional part. It's just that when it comes to the emotions, we're only aggregated to the part that deals with anger, and we don't do anything else. You know what I mean? And I don't have an issue with us being angry with one another. There's a way to express that anger without being abusive.
How do we? Because I have sons, so my sons are very emotionally intelligent. But that's 11 and 7 years worth of consistent effort, understanding where they lack empathy and learning how to like trigger without browbeating and because normally you learn empathy from experience. Oh my God, I can understand and empathize with you because I've been through it. but you don't want to put your kids through that. But there's a lot of gentlemen that don't have that fortune, that they weren't reared in such a manner where, like you said, they're only allowed to be angry.
Yeah.
So now you got all these men that when they feel legit anything other than anger, it's an addiction. They're addicted to feeling angry because that's the only thing they've been allowed to feel. So how do you soften? Because everybody's in a soft girl era. How we get these men in a soft man eras?
So if you remember, I sent it to you. Was it 2 weeks ago? I sent you the list. In of it, they talked about Plutchak's wheel, emotional wheel. And in my class, in my workshop, we actually, when we do circles, if somebody says to me, okay, this me and my girlfriend just broke up, I'm like, all right, cool, let's pull out the wheel. And we'll pull out the wheel and we'll say, how did you feel when this first went down? And they can say, yo, I was angry. I said, okay, how about the next day? The next day I felt betrayed. I was hurt. I'm like, cool. And we actually walked them through those emotions on the emotional spectrum, right? And then we asked them, how do you feel now? Like, da-da-da-da. And it's like, wow, like we weren't raised to think of everything else, right? We just thought about being angry and punching holes through walls, right? So but we have to work that through. We really have to, as men, we have to actually do the practice, and boys have to actually practice working, going through the emotional spectrum, understanding it's okay. It's okay to feel these things, but then we have to teach them and model how to convey those feelings without being abusive. You hurt my feelings. I was disappointed in you because I trusted you, and you betrayed my feelings, and I don't feel good right now. And then we're supposed to respond, well, how can we fix this? How can I restore that relationship? Like, what do I need to do, right? Sometimes it might not need to do anything, but we really have to learn those things and then practice it, which is hard. It's difficult. Trust me, it's difficult. It's difficult to go through the emotional spectrum and do that work. But it's gonna take work, and it's gonna take a community to do that. We can't do that on our own.
So I want to add to that conversation. There's a book by Brene Brown, Atlas of the Heart. Hold on. Call that the sound of freedom. But Atlas of the Heart goes through all the different emotions, right? It tells you the language. So like you said, he felt betrayed because dealing with betrayal is different than dealing with frustration, which is different than dealing with embarrassment, which is different than dealing with anguish, which is different than dealing with grief. You've got to know what you're actually feeling, or else you're just going to miscommunicate to somebody, and then they're going to solve for X when really X is Y. And now you're even more frustrated because you didn't know yourself well enough to communicate properly your emotions.
Exactly.
I think we also have to remember men are conditioned not to have what I call Oprah moments. We've been conditioned to be problem solvers. Regardless of what our feelings are, it's kind of like, okay, what are you going to do now?
Yes.
Because the world shows no sympathy, no empathy, no compassion for how men feel. We're only judged by how we solve the problem.
Okay. You're right. You're right.
So I think
that's true.
And I always try to put things within a context because, we have this conversation, but I don't want us to lose the fact that we're trying to have healthy African unions inside a toxic anti-African climate.
Yep.
Okay. So I don't want that to get lost because, and I see this with conversations about Black male-female relationships. You have these conversations in a vacuum without discussing the impact of that 800-pound gorilla in the room.
I agree.
Okay. So I always want to make sure that dialogues like this take place. It's kind of like everybody wants to talk about rainbows, not realizing you're in a war zone. Okay. So I think with men not having the room to express. When you're in a wartime situation, there's certain luxuries you don't get. Okay, because there's a lot of things that are put on you fairly or unfairly, and there's a lot of people depending on you. Because here's what I always say, and I kind of take it back to The Godfather, where Vito Corleone is in the garden with Michael, and he said something, and y'all can take this for whatever it means. When Vito tells Michael, women and children can be careless, but not men. Okay. What Vito was really saying is that when men make decisions, okay, it's not just a short-term ramification, it's a ripple effect. Okay. And as men, we carry the ramifications of those decisions. Okay. Everything comes back to us. So we can't necessarily be emotional, because there are things, it's like we have to think beyond the moment. Okay. Now, sometimes that gets perverted, but I think there's certain realities we have to accept.
No, but I think that what makes us human is our emotions, right? I think what makes us, because if we didn't have our emotions, we'd be robots, right? That's the discussion that we're having with AIs, right? I don't mean to go off on a tangent. Like, they're not humans. They don't have that emotional side to get that empathy to do those things. And I think we know this for a fact. As warriors, we get PTSD, and we gotta work, we gotta heal. You know what I mean? So I think, if anything, knowing where we are when it comes to the emotions and being able to express that, right? You know what I'm saying? So like when we do capoeira and we train, and before we go to another school to train with a different school, I ask my students, how y'all feel? How y'all feel? Where you at? Oh, I lost my job. You might not be in the right headspace. I don't want you to go into the holdout and knock somebody's head off because of what you're feeling. Because a lot of times we get into that holdout, we in there, we playing hardcore, the music is hard, you lose it, you lose yourself. And it's real easy to do that. So we always do a check. Where you at? We always do a check. Where you at? We actually had two active shooters, not drills. We actually have 2 shooters on my school campus this year. Man, let me tell you, bro. That was very tough for me, because I had to be, don't get me wrong, I had to be that turtle for my students. I had to have that hard shell for my students. I had to have that. But that was probably one of the toughest things I ever did in my life afterward. And I'm glad that I had the space to be able to decompress. You know what I mean? So yeah, and you know what the best part was, when we came back from that, the first thing my students asked me was how I was feeling, how I was doing. And I was able to be honest with them about how I was feeling when it happened and after it happened. And I think we have, as long as we have that, and you're right, we under siege. You're 100% right. We at war. As soon as we walk out that door, we're at war, right? But we're in this together. You know what I mean? And we have each other, and we have to give each other that space. You know what I'm saying? Especially for us, because men, we've been holding it down for a while. We've been getting shot up with spears and all kinds of stuff, and run through the ringer and all kinds of stuff. And we have to be able to decompress.
Okay, so really good question, right? As a woman, it's taken me to after having a family, after caring for a man, to be able to find how I decompress. How, as a man, can you tell other men to start to find that ritual of decompression? Because it's a day-to-day thing. You wake up knowing that you are Black in America, and you know what that means for everybody that has your skin. Just, it is what it is. But that doesn't mean you walk around depressed or upset or angry at the world, because that's not a quality of life for yourself. But how can we encourage men to, 1, decompress with themselves, 2, decompress with their partner if they have one, because that is a whole nother level, and then 3, if they have a family, how can they decompress as a family unit?
I'm gonna speak first as a brother. That's the first thing I'm gonna do, right? I know that I really try to provide a space for my brothers to really decompress, right? So I know a lot of times what I'll do is people joke me all the time. I do coffee dates. I've been doing them since about 2016. I'll be like, hey, what are you doing next Thursday? Let's go out get some coffee or tea or whatever you're into. If you're into smoothies, whatever you're into, let's go. And we'll go and we'll just talk. And a lot of times, a lot of brothers will open up to me. So I do that on a one-on-one basis. I do that consistently. Probably have about 2 or 3 a month, right? Because what we don't need to do is you don't need to go to the bar. Because I notice that we go to the bar, we want to express ourselves, and I don't think that's healthy. I'll say, let's go on a coffee date. That's the first thing I do. But we also have to create spaces, and we have those spaces, right? We have barbershops, right? We have locker rooms, right? And that's where we feel safe enough to be our true selves, right? Really, especially in barbershops. And I think we had to take those opportunities to create spaces for us to really talk about how we feel and what we're going through on our day-to-day. So I think we need to do that. And then I always say this, with your partner, you should always be going out. If humanly possible. Because I know when we first moved to Ohio, we didn't go on a date for like the first 2 years. So, because our kids aren't bad, but we just didn't want to throw all our kids on people. You know what I'm saying? And what happened was one of my capoeira students was like, yo, y'all need to go out on a date. I will watch your children. I got you. And she literally like forced us to go out. So, and she didn't charge us or whatever. So like, but you should be going out with your partner and having a good time. Like just being just y'all two without the babies. And just, it shouldn't stop once y'all get married and have kids. You should continue to be doing that.
And you said as much as humanly possible?
Yes, because, sometimes you can't afford it. Sometimes, things get, especially when you got when you have a lot of children, next thing you know, it's 9 o'clock at night. You're like, oh, snap, you're tired. You're tired. You're like, you know what? Let's just watch a movie. But I think you should go out, just y'all two, dress up, have a good time. And then just talk. And also, like, I recommend that you should at least have one meal a day with your whole family. One, whether it's breakfast, whether it's dinner, whether it's lunch. I know with me, I know my daughter's in the house and she's going to hear about this, but I used to always make brunch for my children on Sundays. Like I always made pancakes. You know what I mean? So like, that's a tradition. Like, and then y'all get together and y'all hang out. I know when my children were younger, I missed this. We used to camp out on Friday nights. We used to make little tents in our living room. We used to camp out and just how you doing, what's going on. And then that's what you should be doing. You should really be making that like part of your schedule. Like this is what we're doing and we're not deviating from that. And that provides security. And with security, there's safety, with routine, and then just being there for your kids. And I know I gave you a lot of information, but those are the things that I do. That's my daily practice.
For me, let's just start with the individual. Physical fitness, because I feel physical fitness for men is probably the most invigorating way to release whatever energy is within him. Okay. And it has to be rigorous physical activity. It can't just be, okay, I'm going to power walk. No, that doesn't work for men. It has to be something rigorous because whatever is being imposed on us, there has to be an equal and opposite force to get it up off us. Okay. And I think I said this in a previous show where I talked about the importance of strength training, particularly as men get older. Okay. So there has to be something where it's rigorous physical activity as part of that decompression. Once that takes place, then I think you're able to decompress with your spouse, your mate, your partner in a more constructive manner, because now that energy has been released. Okay, because you don't want to bring that type of chaotic energy into an intimate setting. Okay. So release it through rigorous physical activity. Then you can sit down with your spouse and be able to decompress in a more constructive, productive manner. And then that spillover effect comes, with the children. So I always say start with the individual and then move outward.
You got the same theory, thought process as me. You know what works for the gooses works for the gander. I love it, gentlemen. That's phenomenal. Um, Dan, you talked about revitalizing spaces that already exist. So the barbershop. I'm not familiar with where men hang out. Where else already exists that is not the bar? Because I really like that point. There's too many of gentlemen that go to the bar to hang out, and then their thoughts get clouded, their judgment gets clouded by the libation that they're consuming, and they're not actually conversing and like growing. They're just, they're out having a good time. And I'm not saying that's a problem, but if they
No, I'm glad you brought that up because I drink. I go to bars. I'm known for that. I'm a amateur bartender, right? But I always tell people we go there to celebrate. We don't go there to, you know what I mean? If you have an issue, we need to. I've gone to the bar and grabbed people and taken them out of the bar and gone to the park and be like, hey, we need to talk. Because we can't do that. That's not what that's for. We can't be self-medicating. We talked about that before.
Right.
We can't be doing that. If you have an issue, let's sit down, let's have a coffee date on Monday and let's talk about this. Let's talk, because the bar is a place for us to celebrate, not a place for us to talk about our problems, because that's not what it's there for. I'm sorry.
No, that's perfect. And again, this whole month is about men and mental health. So really it's not, I want y'all to talk because I do not try to be, I will never try to be a man. And the whole purpose of the show is to highlight where we are is similar. I could say this, but I'm not going to because you're going to, because we are ingredients, right? What works for you works for women too. I am a firm believer as a strength trainer that it is for everyone. We all need to engage in that rigorous activity because one, I can't feel any kind of way about you because now I have empathy. I just beat myself down. You don't need to. Nobody else needs to. I'm not going to beat you down because I know what it really feels like to do so. And as I do these things for myself, Dan, you said you create this security, this safety and routine. It's the same thing that I'm creating for myself that children want, that families need, that as the lead, as the head, that's what you provide for us. So as we wrap up, I think this was such a dope conversation. And gentlemen, I thank you for all your wisdom, all your words. Can you shout yourself out real quick? Tell us what you got going on, what's coming up next, in terms of brothers that may want to reach out for mentoring, tutelage, just tell us what you are, what you do, and hand that.
I have a podcast with my killer tape at. You could also find me, just Google Dan Trezzomi and reach out to me. I do have an outline for men's emotional health group if you need it. It's a 4-week outline. And if you want it, I'll give it to you so you can start it. But if you just want to hang out, let me know what's up. I travel a lot, so we can definitely link up. I don't have an issue with it. If you want to train capoeira, let me know what's up. I do that as well. I teach workshops as well. I know it's capoeira season now, and I'm with that. And I also teach breakdancing as well. I'm a b-boy, so that's how I get down. And if you ever want to talk to me, you guys know where I'm at.
Okay. For me, I'm working on the expanded edition of the Gospel of Afronomics Theology. I'm also working on a book tentatively called The Chicago Code, which is what I call my 21st century urban Bushido for men, which includes something I talked about earlier, the Sambaru system, where I talk about taking young males through an economic manhood ritual to teach them how to become producers from an African-centered perspective. If you want to find me, you can also find me. I have a Facebook group called The Gospel of Afronomics Theology, where we try to put content in the group that deals with what I call the science of beef, business, economics, entrepreneurship, finance. You can email me presently at libertyhallpress@gmail.com. I'm still learning to bring myself into the 21st century via social media and through podcasts such as this.
I love it. I'm gonna drop y'all two brothers out again. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Mama, go ahead and tell them who you are while you was in that corner there.
Well, I'm the other half of the Fit to Heal. We're here. We're talking about the importance of fitness so that we can heal. And like the brother said, you have to physically decompress so that you can express. I am a licensed life coach, personal fitness healer, um, and wellness coach, and I'm all about fitness and healing and making people see and understand the connection between the mind, body, and spirit. Um, I am the CEO and owner of Alchemic Aura. We have a mobile app called Aura Life, and we are here to help. Well, we're here to help you. So look us up. Wherever you find the goddess, you may find me, and wherever you find me, you may find the goddess. We thank you so much for joining us tonight. The brother has stated that uh, we need to look at women as friends, as a man, so we can learn from them and hang with them. And I appreciate that, not just sex, but a real relationship. And I appreciate the comment because it's really critical. So thank you again, all. Where are you, goddess?
I'm right here, and
Oh,
the
there you
internet's
go.
doing this crazy thing. But
Okay.
so go ahead, cut your camera off for me, and I'm gonna try to
All right.
sign out and multitask. Yes. Hey,
That'll
Tribe.
work.
So glad that you were able to tune in with us this evening. It's always a phenomenal time to have the brothers, the gods come out and show us who they really are, what they really got to say. And I love that we speak the same language because I am, because we are. Uh, Now, this is going to run for a little bit because I can't turn it all the way off, but I'm going to drop my camera out. Please don't forget to like, share, and comment. We love, love, love that you tuned in with us. We can't wait to see you again soon. Like I said, it's going to hold on for a bit, but we appreciate you and we'll catch you next Monday.